You know, I like sports, but I can never keep up with sports. And every year I always say, this is going to be the year I keep up with football or baseball or whatever. And every year I fail on day one. Yeah. Sports movies. Who doesn't love those? If there's one thing that can be said about sports movies, is that you can always rely on them to put you in a good mood or feel inspired in some way. Even the sadder ones, they still leave you with a sense of wanting to do better for yourself. Most of them follow some sort of formula. A team or an individual is going through a losing streak, and someone with a troubled past comes on board as either a coach or a mentor. And there's a lot of struggling and a lot of internal conflict, but they eventually turn things around and they come out on top in the end. Not all of them are like that, but most of them follow a variation of that formula. The latest of which being The Way Back with Ben Affleck, which, despite its flaws, was a good time overall. And while most sports movies can be more of the same, it doesn't mean that there aren't plenty out there that can still be enjoyable, whether they offer good laughs, good acting, or whatever. So let's talk about some of the movies that were among the best. And I'd like to preface this with I haven't seen every single big sports movie out there, and this is coming from someone who's not a big sports movie fanatic, so I'm sure I'm going to leave some big names off, and other big names are not going to be in the order that you would expect them to be. But that being said, let's begin. Some honorable mentions I'd like to bring up alphabetically are Caddyshack, Color of Money, Creed, 42, Foxcatcher, The Hurricane, I, Tonya, Jerry Maguire, Rocky, and Slapshot. All great movies. I wish I could have included them on this list, but there are 10 other movies that I like more. Number 10 is The Hustler. How often do you hear a great movie centered around pool? Not often, right? But what makes The Hustler so great is that while pool is the driving force behind this movie's plot, it's not the entire narrative. At the forefront is a gripping character drama, showing a tale of what one man is willing to do to make it to the top, even if it means hurting himself or those around him. Driven by great performances from Paul Newman, George C. Scott, Piper Laurie, and Jackie Gleason, this one remains a true sports classic. Number 9 is Field of Dreams. Sports movies can be really sentimental, and this one's usually at the top of the list of one of the most sentimental. And while it can feel cheesy, it's just so entertaining at the same time. This mixes sports drama with fantasy elements, touching upon themes of people trying to recapture their youth and mending broken relationships with family members. This is a nice, feel-good movie that inspires a sense of nostalgia, and it's one that the whole family can enjoy. Go see it if you haven't. Number 8 is Moneyball. This is a prime example of the more calculating side of sports. The film focuses on real-life baseball manager Billy Beane, played by Brad Pitt, who went for a statistics-based approach to build a winning team rather than going on traditional scouting and intuition. Because of the subject matter, it makes for a very dialogue-heavy movie, which is atypical of a sports movie. But what elevates this is a great screenplay from Aaron Sorkin, who keeps this going with snappy exchanges and witty dialogue to alleviate moments of tension between Beane and everyone else around him. I'd say this is one of the most unique sports movies out there, and it's definitely worth your time. Number 7 is Win-Win. This is a movie centered around wrestling, but like most of the other movies on this list, it's less focused on the sport itself, and it's more driven by rich character development, focusing on one man trying to do whatever he can to keep both his career and family afloat. The film is led by a fantastic performance from Paul Giamatti in one of his best roles, which is a shame because I feel this is often overlooked. This is written and directed by Spotlight director Tom McCarthy, and while it didn't win many awards, I honestly feel this may be his best work to date. Number 6 is Fighting with My Family. The most recent entry on this list, but honestly, I love this movie. Despite being marketed as a wrestling comedy produced by The Rock and featuring him, this is actually a gripping drama that showcases tough working class life in Britain. And it gives us some flawed but beautifully written characters thanks to a brilliant screenplay by writer-director Stephen Merchant. This is one of 3 movies last year to star Florence Pugh here as the real-life wrestler Paige, and honestly, this was easily the best of her performances. One of my favorite movies of 2019, this one is certainly a must-see. Number 5 is Pride of the Yankees. Focusing on New York Yankees player Lou Gehrig, what makes this one stand out is that it doesn't just focus on Gehrig's career, but the relationships he had off the field and the impact he had on many people's lives. It can feel very romanticized, but it's poignant all the same, thanks to an excellent performance by Gary Cooper as Gehrig. And what really helps sell the drama is that it was filmed a year after Gehrig passed away and incorporated many real-life figures playing themselves, most notably Babe Ruth. Touching, heartbreaking, and inspirational in every sense of the word, this one is a true sports classic. Number 4 is Raging Bull. When you think of classic Martin Scorsese, this is one film that immediately comes to mind. It's got all the most famous ingredients, from fiery, profane-riddled dialogue, heavy violence, and Scorsese regulars Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci at the forefront, both of whom consistently light up the screen as brothers Jake and Joey LaMotta. The movie is consistently engaging thanks to a great screenplay by Paul Schrader, filled with plenty of quotable scenes and memorable exchanges. Plus, it contains some of Scorsese's finest direction to date, and to this day remains one of his best works. Number 3 is $1 Million Baby. To this day, this is one of the few movies that almost broke me emotionally. Clint Eastwood's career spans all the way back to the 1950s, but in terms of what he's directed, this might just be his magnum opus. It does contain some of the typical tropes of a sports movie, with Eastwood as the troubled mentor and Hilary Swank as the underdog boxer, but the film also deeply explores what the two characters want out of life besides boxing, and how they bring it out of each other. This results in an extremely emotional character study that remains one of the best films of the 2000s. Number 2 is A League of Their Own. I adore this movie, maybe just for how I watched it all the time when I was younger. A League of Their Own is less complex than most of the other movies on this list, but what makes it so endearing is just for how well written all these characters are. And the performances really sell each of these relationships. From Gina Davis and Lori Petty as these rival sisters, to Madonna and Rosie O'Donnell as their comic relief teammates. But above all else, Tom Hanks gives one of his absolute funniest performances to date as their manager. That's another reason why I love this so much. It's hilarious. I still watch clips of this from time to time just to put myself in a good mood. It's a warm, feel-good movie, and one that you certainly don't want to miss. And number 1 is The Wrestler. This movie is nothing short of incredible. I think part of why I hold it in such high regard is for what it did to me personally. I've always loved film from before this movie was released, but there was a brief period of time where that interest was waning, and this was the movie that sparked a renewed passion for it. It's one of those movies that just subverts expectations. Despite the title, it never really feels like a sports movie, and that's due to some excellent direction from Darren Aronofsky, who gives it this feel as if we're just following this real-life wrestler around. There's a very up-close and personal feel to it. Though what really makes this movie shine? Mickey Rourke. I mean, this is one for the ages right here. He's so broken and vulnerable, it is heartbreaking to watch. He's usually known for being a tough guy in most of his movies, and while here he's a very strong-willed wrestler, we also get to see the man behind that persona, and that's what makes him really relatable. This is a powerful movie, and it's not only my favorite movie of 2008, but my number 1 sports movie of all time. It's rare these days to get sports movies like any of the ones I listed. But like I mentioned, while some still follow a certain formula, that doesn't make them any less enjoyable in some regards. Done right, this genre can really offer something special at times. But let me know, what's your favorite sports movie? Was it any of the ones I listed, or was it something I left off? And do you have a top 10 favorite sports movies of all time? Let me know in the comments below, and as always, if you like what you see, please make sure to hit that subscribe button. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll catch you next time.